Okay, what's the question two? We have here factorize completely each of the following expressions. Woo, the factorization algebraic section. Okay, so we have here, this is called a difference of squares, right? Difference of squares. It's called difference of squares. Now, I saw, let me see, let me check here. A couple of persons left out. Some of you all got it. Somebody got half. Okay. So how do you know it's a difference of squares? When you see something like this and you see a subtraction sign between them. So it's usually two things and they have a subtraction sign between them. Another thing to also note is that when you see something like this, what you supposed to do is first write it in a square form. So in other words, how could we write 1 to the power 2? Or in other words, what by 1 will give us 1 to the power 2? Or to write 1 as a square, right? 1 by 1 is 1 squared. Hence, you all know that, some of you, I guess. So 1 by 1 is 1 squared. So we can write 1 as 1 squared. Some people put in brackets. And the 4h squared, the h is already squared. So the only thing we have to get in the square form is the 4. Some people will think 4h squared means the 4 and the h squared. No, only the h is squared. How do I know? I know because if I was to expand this, it would mean 4 by h squared means h by h. So this term is not fully squared, but part of it is squared. If it was fully squared, they would have written it in brackets like this. Anything in brackets with a squared outside means that everything in the brackets has to be squared. But it's not written in brackets, so the 4, the square, the power, that's why the h doesn't apply to the 4. So since the 4 is not written in a square form, which everything has to be written in the square form, or you have to write it in square form before you put the answer, what you do, you could think to yourself, how do you get 4? How do you write 4 as a square? Some people find your square root or whatever, but I know 2 by 2 will give us 4, right? So 4 squared, not 4 squared, 4 as a squared can be written as 2 to the power of 2 is actually 4. So I could rewrite this as 1 squared minus 2 squared h squared. Some people will write it like that. Some would write it like this, which will be probably a little bit more. That's my final answer yet, but some will write it like this as well, where you put, since we know the 2 and the h has to be squared, they'll write it in brackets, the 2 and the h, and they put the squared outside, which means everything inside the brackets has to be squared. It probably may look a little better like that to some people. And the last thing they'll do to get the answer, you don't even have to we call it, work or anything. So there's a formula, some of you may know it. It looks like this. If you have a squared minus b squared, because it must have a subtraction. If it had a positive sign, what I'm doing here is not going to work out. Eh? It must only have a subtraction. That's why it's called difference of squares. So if you know you're weak in that, you might want to practice somewhere, but it's not that difficult. Once you have 2 letters or 2 numbers, or like this, or we have it in this form that are squared, the answer would always look like this. A plus B in one bracket and A minus B. So that's what the answer they're looking for. So since we have, so this is like the format you really follow So that's why you have to make sure that whatever they give you, you have to write it in a square form first, right? So this would be written as 1 add 2h. Oh, sorry. And it don't matter if you put the bracket with the addition sign first or the subtraction sign first, it don't really matter. You just have to make sure you have a bracket with the addition and the subtraction. That's all you really have to do. So this is the answer that you're supposed to give for this. That's the answer that we're looking for. Can that work? Some people may do it like that too, but in the end, the final part of what you have there, it must look like this. The final answer must look like two separate brackets where you have the 1 plus 2h in one and the other one have the same number and term, but with the subtraction sign. So I hope you are clear on that. I'm replying to Shiva in case he's not sure. Is there anybody else you could, if you're clear what I said, let me know. If there's anybody else who have a question, please ask your question. Of course, it's going to take practice, but this is just right to remember the format. Anytime you see something like that and have a subtraction sign, it's usually two things. This is what you have to do. No questions. What about the others? I'm not hearing the others. Joshua, Kelly, Kimberly, who else? Shania, Jane. I find Jane real quiet, but Amisha, do you have any questions? No questions. Is there anybody writing? Okay, no problem. Thanks for confirming. So the next one, I was shocked when I saw some people love this. So I was like, what? No way. So this is a normal factorization. Sometimes you see two, three terms. You might see it with two terms, but all you had to do is first to group them. So you could group them just as they are, right? And then factor each pair. So I was thinking to myself, like, some people are revising, boy. So I know that, yes, well, I am aware of that, but no problem. Yes, so I know that PQ means P multiplied by Q. So I would expand it like that. So you're looking for the HCF, the highest common factor between the pairs that you pair. So the negative Q squared, uh, that can be written as, remember again, I just always tell you all, when you don't see a number in front of a letter, it matters 1. So it's -1 here. -1 by Q squared means Q by Q, right? Q multiplied by Q. So, what do they have in common? The only thing they have in common is one pair of Q's. So the HCF, the highest common factor, is going to be Q, and then I'll open the brackets. So I'll put Q, open brackets. I'll ask myself what multiply by Q will give me back PQ. Well, P was the only thing that remained. That's the only thing they didn't have in common. So that is P by Q will give me back PQ. And 1 multiplied by Q will give me negative Q squared or negative 1Q squared, negative 1 and Q. So some people write as negative 1Q. Or if you're real good in math, you just write negative Q. Usually your answer should just have negative Q, but some teachers, you will still get it if you have the 1 as well. Right? So that's the first bracket, the first pair that I just did here. And I factored it. So once you finish with the first pair, the same thing you have to do for the next pair. Okay, I think I have to go on the other side of the screen for this, because I really don't have a lot of space remaining. So taking the negative 3p, I will expand it or break it up as, I could either break this up as negative 3, should I use that negative 3? Negative 3 by p, and the 3q as 3 by q. Now, what they have in common, they have the number 3 in common, right? The number 3 itself. So then I will decide whether I'm going with the positive or the negative 3. So now while I'll decide that, I may go with the negative. Why would I go with the negative? Let me tell you why. Because when you factorize in the second pair, whatever is in this bracket, you must get the same exact thing. So whatever going inside the bracket for factorizing the second pair, the brackets must have the same thing. Because if the brackets don't have the same thing, you know something wrong. So I'm going to use it as negative 3 as the HCF, the highest common factor. And I'll ask myself, okay, what multiplier negative 3 will give me negative 3p? Well, p, okay, so we had p here, right? And p was negative. So make sure that the p here is positive too. And then what multiplied by negative 3 will give me q. A minus by a plus or a negative or positive gives you a negative. So a negative or positive gives you a negative. So it cannot be a positive. So I have to put a negative. So here you have to be a little bit more careful. A negative by a negative gives you a positive. We have to make sure whatever we put in here must give you back the 3q, but at the same time must look like this. So it will have to be the negative version of q, or we know q can also be written as 1, right? So if you're not sure, you can still double check. A negative by negative is a positive. 3 by 1 is 3. Q by no other letter is q. Is there anybody unclear about that? So the key is you must get the same thing in brackets. And please note that this could also be written as q, open brackets, p minus q, right? With all the 1 and stuff, which is usually what the answer should look like for the most part. But if you leave it with the 1q stuff, you'll be fine. But the answer should look like this, right? But we are finished yet. We almost finished. So putting this together, starting from the answer for the first bracket, the last thing I have there, I'll put q, open brackets, p minus q, close brackets, and then I'm continuing from with this. So the sign that's in front of the 3, I put in here, negative 3 p minus q. Once I reach this part, guess what I got to do? I have to drop a bracket. So that's why I have to make sure the brackets have the same exact thing. Because when they don't have the same exact thing, you cannot drop the bracket. And then you know you did something wrong. So once you have the same thing, you drop one of the brackets. So you write back the brackets once. So p minus q, p minus q. And then what is outside of the brackets has to go in brackets. So the q here, you have to put that in a bracket. And the minus 3 as well has to go in a bracket. And that's the end of this question. So does anybody have any questions about what I just went through there? Does anybody have any questions? Does all of the bracket matter? Not necessarily, it don't really matter at all, but it's more usual to put the twin bracket, one of the twins, sorry, cause a twin place, but it don't really matter though, because in maths, when you have a bracket, and a bracket really means multiply, but you don't have to multiply anything. Let me tell you why you don't have to multiply this. If you multiply these two brackets, you'll end up back with this. This stuff that's on the top here, if you multiply all this, the answer you got here, you'll just be doing the reverse of what you just did. So you don't have to multiply the brackets, just mentioning that, right? So, can you do it with the formula version between the formula version? I talk about quadratics, but it's not quadratics, you know. This is just factorization of algebraic terms, but how about it's have a quadratics below. So just clarify the same we mean quadratics, but I have no formula for this, you know. So I just want to be clear. What was I going to say, boy? Because quadratics is where you have like something with x squared plus bx, a term in x, and then c. Is there anybody still writing this? Is there anybody still writing?